So Israel just finished their defense in the International Court of Justice. And I did not watch the hearing because of the time difference, but I watched the important clips. Honestly, I thought it's a waste of my time to waste 3 hours of my day just to listen to a group of adults blaming every single actions on Hamas. One of the funniest thing when Hamza went live and counted every single time they said Hamas. But anyway, it's amazing how the South African team predicted every single talking point that Israeli defense will use. Example, using the self-defense claim. The South African team have already disputed this yesterday by saying that Israel is the occupying force and you can't defend yourself against a group of people you are occupying. The second thing they talked about the aid. What was magnificent about the South African case that they quoted as much as possible United Nations organizations and how Israel obstructed the reach of the aid to the people in Gaza. The other thing Israel used to dispute the South African genocidal claim is that they dropped leaflets on the civilians for them to evacuate. But South Africa have already disputed this yesterday by saying that giving 24 hours to civilians to forcibly evacuate is not enough and constitute genocide. Another magnificent argument they used. At this point, all of us have seen the Israeli soldiers filming themselves, making TikToks, celebrating destruction of homes in Gaza and infrastructure. This lawyer argued that the actions of the soldier lie on the soldiers. So basically, they threw the soldiers under the bus. And this is interesting because it shows you that they have expectations that this case may go beyond. And if that happened, that on the soldiers, not the military. This is interesting for the dual citizen Israeli soldiers. This would basically give merit, for example, to Britain to prosecute British Israeli soldiers who filmed themselves doing these actions. And one of the arguments they use also to dispute South African case, they claim that during the Srebrenica massacre, the ICJ did not stop military actions. But again, this is something the South African team have already disputed because this is not a state versus state, this is a state versus a group of occupied people. And I know this is not gonna sound weird at all, but they also use the human shield argument. One of their arguments as well that South Africa is not party of the conflict, so this case should be dismissed. I swear to God, like at some point this guy was talking about emails going back and forth between the Israeli and South African officials. Like you're standing defending a state against genocidal actions and you're talking about emails. And one last thing to show you how competent the South African team versus the Israeli team, this lawyer who's defending Israel paused in the middle of the hearing because his papers were shuffled. He was not even prepared. And he started to blame someone, oh, someone shuffled my papers. We already have Israeli media claiming that they're not very concerned about what the ICJ will come up with because they are fully aware that any ruling that goes against Israel, the United States can veto it. To be honest, I'm not very optimistic about the ICJ. I'm very pessimistic about this because historically every judge in the ICJ votes based on the political stance of their country. But even if the ICJ ruled that Israel's action constitutes genocide, if the Security Council in the United Nations tried to enact a ceasefire, the US can blatantly just veto it. But what the ICJ can do, and I think this is the aim of the South African case, that they can pause the military action until they come up with a ruling. In the case between Gambia and Myanmar, they did so after 40 days of the hearing. In the case of Russia versus Ukraine, they did so after 8 days of the hearing. Anyway, this is a historical moment to South Africa, this is a historical moment to the Palestinians, this is a historical moment to those who are under injustice. And all we can do is hope for the best.